Once he did this, he was able to see Flight 797 again, but he could only see where it was, not its altitude or any more detailed information. Up until this point, the situation on board had been calm, and the pilots had been in control. But from this moment onwards, with every passing minute, the flight's problems would get exponentially worse. As this was happening in the cockpit, the first officer noticed a cabin crew member gesturing for him to return to the cockpit quickly. The first officer rushed back, took his seat, and told the captain that he thought they needed to descend immediately. The captain knew from his tone that the situation was far more serious than he had thought it was. As if to back this up, the master warning light then flashed, this time accompanied by annunciator lights indicating a loss of power to both of the emergency electrical buses. Now, the most important instruments in the cockpit, the two pilots' attitude indicators, began to fail. The captain told the first officer to activate the emergency power switch, which directed battery power to these instruments, allowing them to come to life again. But the plane now only had enough electrical power to supply a small number of systems. In fact, without AC power, the horizontal stabilizer at the back of the plane had stopped working. Without it, all the captain now had to control the pitch of the aircraft was the elevators, the much smaller surfaces attached to the rear of the stabilizer. This meant that when he needed to point the plane up or down, he would have to exert huge amounts of force on his control column. What had started out as an exercise in problem solving and decision making had now become a test of physical stamina too. This was the stuff of nightmares, an uncontained fire on board with multiple instrument failures. For the first time since the flight began, it became clear the stakes were life and death. The captain quickly brought the throttles back to idle, pulled the speed brake handle, and began pitching the plane down into a steep descent. As he did this, Cameron declared an emergency to air traffic control, telling them that they had a fire on board and that they were descending. The controller told him that he had him on radar at 25 nautical miles from the Cincinnati airport and asked if he could make it there. 25 miles was very close. Normally, a plane requires about 100 miles to lose 33,000 feet of altitude. But this was no ordinary situation. The captain said that he could make Cincinnati, and then requested descent clearance. The controller cleared Flight 797 down to 5,000 feet. As the aircraft plunged into a thick layer of clouds at 25,000 feet, the atmosphere on board became increasingly toxic. With the fire raging behind the plastic fittings, acrid fumes began to enter the cabin not just from the toilet area, but from the seams in the fuselage ceiling and the overhead bins. Passengers began conserving their breath, taking small sips of air to avoid coughing and choking on the poisonous air. The smoke was filling the cabin like a sand glass in reverse, with smoke building up at the ceiling and then getting lower and lower as the minutes ticked on. This was a far cry from the calm on board just minutes ago. The passengers were desperate for air, but the captain refused to drop the oxygen masks. Doing this might not only make the fire worse, but it wouldn't help the passengers anyway, as passenger oxygen masks don't form a complete seal, meaning that the full breaths the passengers would take while wearing them would draw in smoke too, only harming their lungs further. They had no choice but to hold on for dear life as the pilots brought the plane down. The captain was tearing through the clouds at lightning speed. He had pulled the speed brake handle all the way back, to the position